Okay, in this video, we're going to be going over each and every node in the AI Workflow Builder. So let's get started. I'm going to open up a workflow and I'm going to click on the plus to start a new one. And I'm going to click on the Add Node button. And I'm going to start here at Classifier. And we're going to come to this subagent and trigger at the end because these are very powerful nodes. So on the Classifier node over here, this is where you can have the AI make a decision on like what category or class is an item or is this conversation. Now, the most common one is just going to be like sentiment, like is this positive or negative? And so you can type in some instructions here on how it should classify the conversation. And so you can customize that. It could also be intent based. It could also be urgency based. It could also be, is this a support or is this a sales question or conversation? All right. So you can use this multiple different ways. And this is for routing a conversation, creating a different branch based on your instruction. Now, it doesn't have to just be the classification of the conversation because you can actually input variables in here inside the instructions. So you can say, I want you to classify the answer that the user gave or the webhook that you received, right? You can classify anything on here. That's the classifier node. Going on to the next one, we have call forwarding. Now, call forwarding is one of our most popular nodes in here, and there's a lot of options, and let me show you how it works. First of all, you're going to have different forwarding rules. So businesses might have different hours on the weekend versus the week. And so you can select the days and times you want this rule to apply along with the time zone. And below that, you have the forwarding mode. And there's three types of forwarding modes. You can have this ring everybody at the same time in your list, and the first person to pick up wins. Or you can have it go down the list and ring one at a time until you finally get someone that answers. And then one of the more popular ones is AI picks. This allows the AI to pick who to forward the call to based on some instructions. So you might say, send all the sales calls to John and send all the support calls to Steve. And you can define those instructions. Now, on the call forwarding, you do have the option to set a whisper message. So when the person picks up the phone on the other end receiving the forwarded call, it can say something like call from, a new lead alert, right? Or press 1 to accept this call. That's the whisper message. The customer on the phone is not going to hear it, only the person receiving the call. And now you can speak something to the customer on the phone or on the website widget or wherever you're using this. You can have the AI say something to the user before it completes the call. And you can also play a ringing sound so the customer knows that the phone is dialing right now. In addition, you can set a ring timeout, how many rings you want to happen before it decides the call was not answered. And then you got the confirm key. So if you want the person to have to press 1 before they accept the call. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, sometimes if you're forwarding a call to your cell phone, your voicemail might pick up, right? And you don't want to transfer someone to your voicemail. So you put the confirm key there. So you actually have to answer the phone, press the 1, and then you get the call forwarded to you. And then we have global node. Global node's amazing because you can set instructions on when the AI should jump to this node directly and kind of go off track. An example could be, setting a global node to speak with a manager. Speak with a manager, I can type that in here. And so we can go ahead and type some instructions in here and say, you should go ahead and transfer the call to the manager if someone asks to speak with a manager. You can go ahead and type those instructions in here. Let's go on to the next node. Next node, we got forward to an agent. Now, this one's great because you can have different agents with different roles at your company, and each agent can be responsible for a different role, right? And so if someone's speaking with your lead generation agents and they say, you know what, I got a support question, well, you can transfer them to a different agent and you can actually share the context of that conversation with the next agent so it knows who it's speaking with already, what it's speaking about, and you don't have to repeat yourself. So you got the forward to agent. Now, before you forward this conversation or this person to the next agent, you can basically say a transfer message like, please hold while I connect you now, and you can pick static or AI generated. Now, AI generated is always going to be instructions on what you would like the AI to say, whereas static is exactly verbatim what you want it to say. So AI generator is only going to say something like, I'm going to connect you now. And it's going to give a more personalized response that's more context aware. So really, really cool step. The possibilities are endless with that one as well. All right, next one's hang up. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. It can speak a greeting or a message right before it hangs up, and you can customize that here. Next one we have is the manual tool call. Now, this is going to be for, some more advanced use cases, like you might be dealing with MCP tools or you might be dealing with some integrations. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. You probably don't need it. But this allows you to call an MCP tool or specific integration tool at any time you want. And that could be like adding a tag in an external system, or it could be, just about anything. MCP is very, very broad, and there's tons of applications for that. But that's where you can call manual tools, and you can select the specific tools that you want to call. Going on to the next one. The next one is also going to be very popular. This is the decision node. And decision allows you to specify different branches. Could be true or false, could be homeowner, yes or no. It could be income brackets, right? You make between this range or this range or this range. And so you can add as many paths as you want. You can name each one, right? Favorite color, I can say blue. Favorite color is orange. And I can go on so on. And I can select the conditions. Now, you can use any custom field to do these conditions, or you can use any of the built-in fields. And you got and operators and or operators, which is really nice. So you can do some pretty advanced conditions in here to do your routing. And the best part is, once it does the match, it's going to route that person to the correct branch that you define. All right. And so the next step is API lookup. Now, this can be an API post to send data. It can be an API get to receive data. And you can do both of those all in one step. Now, typically, you'll just set your API URL here, and you're going to set like a request header. You probably have like an API key you got to put there. You might want to copy and paste. And when you do your request, you usually get some sort of response. And that response could be some code that looks like JSON or XML. And so we use like a dot notation to parse that. So for example, if you have let's say a data field as the first element in the JSON, you would type data. And if inside that you have something like let's say amounts, you can put data.amounts on here to access the amount item inside the data item in here. Now, if you have no, let's say data element wrapping it, you can just put amounts. If that's over your head and you need help, connecting the APIs, you can go ahead and reach out to us and we're happy to help. The response mapping is all about taking a response from the API and storing it to a variable. And so the variable name on the right is where I want to store that response. Now, when you want to test it, we got the test mode here. You can send a payload, see the response, and see how it works. All right, off to the next step. And here we got SMS. SMS, you can select the from number you want to send messages from. You can also select the recipient who's going to receive the message. And then you got the message content. Now, we do have the different modes of sending content. You got static, spin, and AI generated. And AI generated, again, is going to be that prompting, so it can generate a custom message for that user. Spin text is going to be that spin text you can plug in here. And then we also got the ability to do images, which is an MMS. And gone are the days where you have to do like conditions, like if it's within business hours, then send the text message. Now you can do it all in one node, and because you have send timing. And with send timing, say send immediately within business hours, only on certain days, etc. And then, of course, we got the wait for reply. So this allows the workflow to stay stuck on this node, waiting for a reply to the SMS. Now, you wouldn't do this during a live phone call because you don't want to leave the person hanging on the phone. But there's cases where you're doing outbound marketing. You want to see, does that person want to book a demo? Yes, we're going to wait on that node until we get a response or a timeout. So when you turn that on, you can say, well, how long do you want to wait? And you're going to get a condition here if you received a response or not in time, or if there was a timeout. Let's go on to the next step. And this is going to be email. Now, email, very similar to the SMS node. You're going to have, who it's from and who it's to. This time you got an email subject line and an email body. And of course, in the email body, you can use variables and you can plug in any detail about the system, the contact, or some of the outputs you got from some of the other steps. Now, you may be using another step here to generate the email content for you. And so I'm going to show you how you can do that in another node. But this is a pretty standard step that a lot of people use. And just like SMS, you got the send timing as well, plus attachments and wait for a reply. I'm going to go on to the next node down here. Let's see. This is the go-to node. So go-to node is great because you can separate your workflows into like reusable logic that you can just go to at any time. You might have a specific workflow that deals with no-shows for appointments, right? And so you might have multiple places where you might just want to go to that specific part. You may have specific workflows for dealing with support questions, right? You can have a node just go to that specific spot. So this allows you to just jump anywhere in any workflow. Very, very cool. Next, we're going to go to the wait for amount of time. Now, this is, I think, one of the most, if not the most popular steps, because anytime you're doing any sort of outbound marketing, you're always waiting till that next move. So you might use a call for, outbound call step, wait a day, and then you'll send an SMS, and then you'll wait a day, and then you'll send an email, and then you'll wait, right? So you're using this step a lot. Now, some other use cases for the wait for time is you can wait until specific days, right? This could be an anniversary date. This can be a birth date. And you may not want to wait until the exact day of their birthday. Maybe you want to wait to, minus 1 day before their birthday. So you can send them, a happy birthday reminder. And so instead of sending it at midnight, because that might not be good on their birthday, you can go ahead and maybe send that at 9 a.m. So you can customize the time to send it there, or specify the time to wait there. Let's go on to one of the next nodes here. We got add note. This allows you to add notes to the contact so your team can see this when they pull them up. And so you can specify the background color. And so if you want to come up with some color coding type of system, you can. And of course, you got the little plus icon, which always tells you can put in variables. So anything about the contact or any of this output of any of the steps. Let's go on to one of the next nodes in here. And this one we have create task. Now, create task is great because this allows the AI to assign things to your humans to do or reminders of things to do. This might be following up with people at a specific date, calling people. All right, you can set up tasks in here as well. Of course, you got the variables to insert into the task name, and you can select the assignee, and you can specify a fixed date as the due date, which is not as common. Maybe if you have a launch on a specific date, you can set a fixed date. Most people are going to pick a relative date, like the task is going to be due 1 day from now. And that's where you can set that here. Going on to the next node, this one's going to be outbound call. Again, this is going to be one of the most popular ones in here as well for your outbound marketing. You're going to do things like do an outbound call, wait, do an SMS, wait, do another outbound call, etc. And so on this node, we have different branches. We got answer, no answer, voicemail, and failed. So you can know what actually happened on that call when we attempted to make it. So if you open this up, you get to pick what phone number we want to call, and you get to pick what number you want to show as the caller ID. Now, we do support number pools on here as well. I'm going to show you that in a different video. That's basically a group of numbers that you can call from, but you can select the caller ID. And then this one's a little unique. So you get to say, well, when the person answers the phone, where do you want that call to be connected to? Right. And so this one, I have to show you this in two flows here, because this one is super important and it's also one of the most common. So let me actually go in. I'm going to create a new workflow over here. And so let's say this is a manual trigger. And I'm going to do two workflows. Right. So this workflow is going to be what happens when a conversation starts. And so I'm going to pretend like this is the workflow when I call someone, and this is what I want the AI to say. Right. So I'm going to type in a conversation node. This conversation node is going to say, hey, and I'm going to put in the first name. So I'm going to say contact, first name. I'm going to say, hey, first name, how are you? And I'll delete the routes. I'll just click apply. Now that I have this flow, and I would love to give this a name, like let's say outbound call answered, right? All right, outbound call answered workflow. And so now in this one, this is going to be my outbound marketing workflow. Marketing And on this one, this will be a manual trigger because I'm going to add all my contacts to it. And let's say I'm doing the call forwarding node. And on the call forwarding node, we're going to say, sorry, not call forwarding, I mean outbound call. So outbound call. Outbound call node. And on the outbound call node, I'm going to say when the person answers the phone, we're going to trigger a workflow. And that workflow here is going to be outbound call answered. So that means as soon as someone answers, the AI is going to say, hey, first name, how are you today? Right. And so that's how we connect the outbound with the AI. Very, very common here. Now, if they don't answer, right, it's going to go to the no answer branch, or if it gets voicemail, it'll go to voicemail, fail, it'll go to fail. Now, let's say the outbound call is done. You just had a 5-minute conversation. Your AI had a 5-minute conversation with your lead. Let's say it booked a demo, etc. This workflow after the call is going to resume. It's going to resume and it's going to go down the answered branch so you can continue doing your marketing and follow up. So these two flows are going to be working together. So very important step. It's definitely used a lot. It's one of the most used nodes in our system. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Next one is going to be the conversation node. This is also a staple. I mean, this is how you do everything on the phone. You have to have the AI speak, right? And so here you have two different ways you can speak. You got static response and AI generated, and then you have routes. Now, the cool thing about routes is you can go in and specify two different routes, and you might have sales and support. And if you get like scenarios where like the AI didn't really pick the right spot and you need to kind of give it some fine tuning to go in there and update it, we got this little icon on the right, and this allows you to put in kind of like synonyms or other examples on when the AI should pick this route over the other. Sometimes you may have some sales questions that kind of sound like support, right? And so you can say if someone's asking about how to use this particular node, in the workflow builder, send them to support, right? And it's not a pre-sale question. So you could give it more instructions or examples here. It's going to make the AI smarter over time. But you can add as many routes as you want. And every time you add a route, it of course branches the conversation there. Now, the option that is enabled by default, and it should be enabled for most people's use cases, is the stay on node if no route match. Now, what does this mean? Well, if this is the first node in my conversation, it says, hi, how can I help you today? Do you want sales or support? And if I just say, hey, what was your name again? Right. And the AI is going to respond. Now, if this wasn't checked, the AI is forced to pick a route, right? So the customer didn't ask for sales or support. It just asked what your name is. But the AI is forced to pick an option. So certain cases where that might be okay, like maybe you just want like positive or negative type of intent. And so you want it to kind of force it to make a decision. But in most cases, you're just going to leave this checked. Allow interruptions. This is where you can specify if you want the human to be able to interrupt the AI or not. And then you got the global node, which allows this node to be accessed from anywhere within this workflow. And the example I always give is, let's say you have the speak with a manager node or schedule an appointment. You can just type in, here's the title, schedule an appointment. And then I'm going to type in the instructions, go to this node when someone wants to schedule an appointment, and then that's it. Now, keep in mind, the AI can read and see the title and instructions. So the title is just as important as the instructions as to tell the AI on when to go here. Okay, now we're going to go on to the next node. Next, we have the ask and save node. Now, ask and save is another staple because so many customers are asking questions, qualifying leads, generating leads, and all that good stuff. So on this node, this is where we're going to define what questions we want the AI to ask the user. So very simple. I'm going to click on add a question. I'm going to say, do you own a business? And so we have the ability to select different types of fields for this question. And so this really affects how we're going to display it later. Now, if I put a question as like, do you own a business? And I just make it text, like the AI could write yes, the AI could write no, right? But I want it to be kind of like a checkbox, just like it's either checked they own a business or it's not. And so I can just select checkbox, true or false. But we got tons of different options in here. Now, you might pick a drop down, which is multiple choice. I could do that too, right? And I can put in the options as yes and no. That's another way we could do it. But drop down, I normally associate when you have like tons of different options. Maybe it's like, what industry are you in? And you got a list of available options. Or we could just do it as text. What industry are you in? And we could just store the value as text. But for this, I'm going to do checkbox. Do you own a business? A lot of times there's many ways to do things in here and none of them are the wrong way. There's just different ways to do it. So do you own a checkbox? Okay, check. Now I'm going to add another question. What industry are you in? And so I'm going to click on create. Now, I may want to also ask them, what's the name of your business? So I can put in, what's the name of your business? So I'll go ahead and fix that. All right. And so this one will make text. And so you can see I got 3 questions on here. Now, it is very common to want to do conditional questions. That means we're only going to ask a certain question if the answer to a previous question was, I'll give you an example. So let me see, like, let's say, what's the name of your business? I only want to ask this if the person said they have a business. I'm going to come down here to visibility and I'm going to say, we're only going to ask this question, what's the name of your business? If do you own a business is true or yes. That way, we're not going to ask silly questions. So you can do conditional questions with all of them. And one of the most important things to know about this step is you'll notice I'm phrasing these as questions. Do you own a business? And then you'll notice below that, there's a variable name generated automatically for me. It says business owner. Now, because it's selected on AI generated by default, it's not going to say this wording verbatim on the phone. It's going to say it in context, right? So if someone says, hey, I wanted to book a demo, it's not going to just say like, oh, do you own a business, right? It's going to say, oh, wonderful. You want to book a demo? Great. Let me gather the information I need. Do you own a business, right? It's going to put it in context. It's going to be a little bit smoother. There are cases where some people want the question to be worded exactly how they wrote it. And so in that example, you're going to click on static response. Static response means it's going to read this question verbatim to the customer how you typed it. So that's great. Now, there's other important things on this step that I want to show you. Let's go back to the business name question. Now, the business name question, this variable is able to be used in other steps in the workflow. So let's say I want to save this value to the contact so I can reference it later. I'm going to flip that switch to save to contact. I'm going to save this to the company field. Now, you can use any of the built-in fields to save information, or you can go ahead and use the create custom field. You can create as many custom fields as you want. And then up at the top, you got the save lead record. So it's going to automatically create the lead or contact once it gets the answers, which is great. And then you can allow interruptions or not, along with save to activity log. Activity log is what you see in the middle parts when you're viewing a contact. You see the history of the person. That's off by default because, of course, you're saving the answers already to the contact if you have the save to contact enabled. That's all for this step. Again, it's one of the most common steps in here. Let's go on to the next. Next, we got update contact. And update contact, this happens automatically on some steps like ask and save. It's going to save the answers if you select save to contact. But there's certain cases where you may want to update a field on a contact yourself. And so you can select any field in here you want, right? And you can go ahead and set the value. And the value could be something static that you typed, or it can be a variable. Let's say you're going to put in some sort of score, right? You got a lead score. I'm going to say, I want to set the lead score here to 100. You could do that here. Now you can add as many fields as you want to update in this step. And that's the update contact step. And we're going on to the next. Next one's going to be contact lookup. Again, this is also another staple in here. Everybody uses this to make sure they don't have duplicate contacts in the system and to locate customer profiles. Let me give you 2 examples. Let's say you have a caller that calls in on your phone number. Well, guess what? When they call, you have the caller ID phone number, right? And so you can look up to see, do we already have a contact in our system with this phone number? If you do, right? Well, guess what? You got these little branches out here. It says match and no match. So you'll be able to route the customer and the logic depending on if they're found or not. If they weren't found, then you can say, well, what do we do next? Well, let's create a new contact and let's use the phone number that we just got in the caller ID and let's create that new contact. So, very powerful step. Now, there are cases where you can chain these together. Let me give you an example. Let's say I don't want to create a contact here. We're going to try to match them based on their phone number. And if there's no match, I might put in a talking node. I might say, if this was an insurance company, do you happen to have your policy number available? Right? Or I can use the ask and save step. Do you have your policy number available? And let's say they give you the policy number. Well, guess what? I'm going to put in another lookup node. And I can, instead of matching on the phone number, I can go ahead and look up on the policy number. So I could come in here and select, this would have to be a custom field, but I can go ahead and put in, let's say, I'll just pretend like, company name, right? What's your company name? I'm going to look you up by company name. You can put what the user said here on this side and look up them a different way. So very powerful step. You can look them up by any value on the contact and you can chain these together. So super powerful. Let me go on to the next step in here. Next step is going to be smart calendar booking. Again, this is also one of the most popular steps in here. Calendar booking, absolutely critical, generating appointments for so many different industries. It's very similar to the ask and save node. So down here, you're going to have, you're going to have to click on a calendar integration. So connect your calendar first. And then below that, you have your questions. So you're going to be able to specify the questions you want to ask. Now, certain calendar integrations have certain required fields. Like if you're going to connect Google Calendar, you have to have an email address, right? So you're going to have those questions on there automatically, and you might want to add additional questions on here. Do you own a home? There you go. Do you own a home? Now you can have additional questions. Also, you have the ability, just like the ask and save step, to use static responses or AI generated responses. So you can control, is it going to say the wording that you typed here verbatim, or is it going to say that with context? That's all for this node. Next, we're going to go to SMS notification. SMS notification is very different from the normal SMS node because this allows you to send a system notification from the platform. And so because this is from the platform, you don't get to edit what it says. This allows you to send a notification, let's say to yourself or a client before you have your 10 DLC approved. This can be things like common things like a new lead notification, appointment book notification, and you get this sort of template in here. And so you can't modify it. You can only insert the variables in here to send this notification. So it's the quick and easy way to be able to send a text message notification from day one, the first day you log into the system, without waiting for your 10 DLC approval to be able to send SMS. That's a great node. Let's go on to the next one, and that is going to be tag lead. Now, tags are great. I always say use them sparingly because over time your list of tags can grow so big, and then if you end up having so many tags on a contact, it ends up being meaningless. So I used to use tags for everything, like tag them like I sent them the Cyber Monday special, and then we sent them the Black Friday special, and then we sent them this and that, and so you can use tags. You can tag for anything you want. But, there's going to be a better way, I think, to organize your leads. I'm going to show you in one of the next steps. So after tag lead, let's go down. The next one is going to be that better way I was just talking about. That is set pipeline. Now, you're able to put customers in any column in any pipeline. And so you can click on the add pipeline button right here, and I can, let's say, move people to this specific stage. Now, the beautiful thing about this is I like putting everybody in at least one pipeline. So I know what stage or state they're in with our business. Are they a lead? Are they a sale? Are they a customer? Right? What state are they? And so I use that as like, the better than a tag. I just can look at the contact immediately and know exactly what standing they have with our business without trying to dissect a bunch of different tags. So I like using this pipeline status. It's right there on front of the contact, so I can see right in front of my face, where they're at in their journey. Let's go on to the next one. Set pipeline was that. And now we're going to go to Search AI Knowledge Base. All right, this is a very powerful node, and there's certain scenarios where this may be useful. It's not going to be for everyone. So as you know, the AI knowledge base is built into the AI agents. You can load up your website, you can load up PDFs, you can load up all sorts of knowledge in here, and that really trains your AI so it has that knowledge base to reference and look up answers when it needs to. Now, there's certain scenarios where you may want multiple different knowledge bases. Now, this could be product information, right? I could have a knowledge base for Apple products. I could have a knowledge base for Microsoft products or LG TVs and Sony TVs. And so when it's looking up information, I don't want to put those in the same knowledge base because if the AI is trying to find instructions on how to do a reset of the television, I might pull up multiple articles and it might say the wrong thing, right? And so you have separate knowledge bases so it can reference the correct knowledge base at the correct time. Let me give you another example of it was actually a school district customer. School district had multiple different schools, and if you ask a question specific to that school, and I don't remember what it was, but like who's the superintendent of the school, something like that. If the AI goes and it looks up that information in a knowledge base that has all the information of all schools, it might give the wrong answer because it's just going to be picking one of those answers. But if you're able to direct the person to the correct knowledge base based on the school, right, you're going to end up with a knowledge base per school that's able to give the correct answer every time. So very powerful tool. It's only useful for certain use cases. Pretty much where you have multiple locations, I think is probably the best case. Multiple locations, multiple brands, you want that separation. All right, let's go on to the next one. Next one is extract dynamic variables. This one is going to be something that's actually very powerful. So you can extract information out of a conversation. Now, this could be things like what's the person's name? What's the person's phone number? What's their email? Now, you could do that with the ask and save node as well, right? So there's many different ways to build things and there's pros and cons with each one. And I'm going to give you an example. The first example I'm going to give of extract dynamic variables is there's things you can extract out of a conversation that doesn't have to do with information the customer gave you, right? So I might extract the sentiment. I might extract the user satisfaction, right? And I can go ahead and give this like a variable name like satisfaction level and a description of from 1 to 10, 10 being the greatest, give me a number of the user satisfaction. AI is going to make a decision on that and it's going to populate that variable here for you to use later in the workflow. Another example is I could try to extract if I think this is going to be a sales call or a customer service call, right? So I can extract that here as a variable. Let me give you an example of when you'd want to use extract dynamic variables over ask and save. And the first example that comes to my mind is actually a restaurant customer. And the restaurant customer has a process where the AI takes orders and it sends them the payment information. So when you're collecting the order information, if you tried to put this in the ask and save node, you're going to find out that, the way that customers order on the phone isn't very linear. They might say, I want a hamburger, then they want fries, and they say, that's it. And they say, no, wait a minute. Actually, I need to get 2 hamburgers, change it to 2 hamburgers, right? And the conversation's kind of all over the place. So because of that style of answering questions where orders may change, you may have groups placing an order and you have multiple people kind of in the background. They're communicating with multiple people, trying to take everybody's order. Because of that, you want to use the extract dynamic variables because you're able to look back on the conversation through everything they said, right? And then get a list of items that they got in that order. And that's better than the ask and save step because once it puts in the answer, it just goes on to the next. So there's no way to just say, oh, wait, go back and change that. And so extract dynamic variables is the best way for those kind of non-linear examples where you're collecting data like order taking. Super powerful node. And I'm going to show you one of my other favorites as well. Let's dive in. All right. Now, this is one of my personal favorites. So generate content. Now, when would you want to use this? Well, the generate content node allows AI to create content for you to use. Now, the most common example is going to be have the AI create me an SMS to send the customer, or create me an email. Let's go ahead and do that. So here's an example here. I could copy and paste this variable name. So I put in a variable name as SMS body. I'll click on variable SMS body, and I can put on the description here, the instructions, put over here, say, write a personalized SMS based on the conversation. Now, when would you use this? Well, let me give you a specific example. Let's say you're on a sales call with a customer, or your AI is on a sales call with a customer. Customer says, you know what? What's the difference between your pro plan and your max plan? Right. And they say, oh, that's great information. Can you shoot me an email with that? Right. And so this is just on the fly custom information for this specific user. The user said, please shoot me an email with that information. Well, I could have a global node, which is the conversation node enabled as global, says when the customer asks to send an email, go here, right? Then I'm going to use the generate content node to say generate the email that the customer asked for. And so it's going to generate that as a variable or a text message. And so one of the important things in here I like to point out is you want to typically check this box that says include system prompt instructions. This is going to include your full system prompt over there on the left. And this allows it to know everything about your business, the writing style, tone, everything. And that's going to enable it to give a better response. Now, if you don't care there's scenarios where you might have the email step right after generate content. So you don't want this to kind of process in the background. This will wait, the workflow will wait on this step until it's done, and then it'll go to the next. Now, there's certain cases where you're okay with this running in the background. And so why would you want it to run in the background? Well, you may not want the customer to wait that, 0.3 seconds or 0.2 seconds, however long it is, to generate this content. So you might just say, you know what, generate it in the background and we'll save it later to the contact. But there's a couple different ways you can use this. But what I would do here is I'd have it generate the SMS message body. I would click apply. And then on your next node, we could go ahead and say send an SMS. I would plug that in here. And inside here, we're going to go ahead and insert the message body right here. Let's see, SMS message body. Right. So this is the AI generating the message. And then the next step, sending the message. So super powerful node in here, generate content. Let's go on to the next, execute workflow. This allows you to launch a different workflow inside your agent. This could be used for, different, anytime you got like a different workflow you just want to execute. You might be organizing your workflow so you have like reusable logic and you can execute them from different places. And so you got that pretty straightforward example. And you can also launch other workflows from other agents, which can be useful as well. Let's go on to the next step, deactivate from workflow. Now, this one is actually very popular as well. And the reason is there's a lot of times where you might want people to only be in one workflow at a time. You might have a lead workflow where you have an AI that's converting your leads into demos and demos into sales, right? So in that example, you might have the lead generation email that's doing your outreach and it's doing your calls, emails, text messages. And then once they book a demo, well, you want to deactivate them from all other workflows, right? So you can say deactivate from all workflows and all agents. And that's going to make sure that they're not getting the emails to try to get them to book a demo because they just booked, right? So you're going to use this a lot of times with your trigger. So you can make sure the contact's only running in the workflow that you want at the right time. Let's go on to the next step here. We got availability check. Now, this is going to be very similar to your executive assistant, how they act on the phone, your receptionist. You're going to get scenarios where someone asks, I want to speak with Susan. Is she in? Well, you might have her schedule here to say she works on these days, and you can have different schedules for different days of the week. And then you might plug in her calendar, right? And so this is going to allow the AI to look at the schedule and look at her availability on her calendar and then decide, is she available or not? And so you might use this in combination with call forwarding. So you're only forwarding the call when the person's not in a meeting and when they're actually working. So super powerful step here. Let's go on to the next one. Next one is pretty standard here. This is going to be your do not disturb contact step. And so this is like if someone asks to be opted out, you want to place them on the opt out list or do not disturb. You can go ahead and say enable do not disturb on all channels. This makes it so the customer will not be contacted by the AI, any workflow, or even a human by clicking a button in the system. If they're opted out of calls, for example, you can't click to call the phone number and the agent can't call on the outbound calls. It's going to error out. So definitely got to use this so you can honor your customer's opt out request right here. And that's the do not contact step. Now, I said I'm going to come back to one of the most powerful steps. And so to show you how the triggers work, I'm starting with a new agent right here, and I have a trigger of manual. Now, manual is going to be the most popular trigger you're going to use in here because you're going to control manually when you're adding your customers or your leads to this specific agent. Let me show you how that works. So first of all, when I have a trigger of manual, you'll typically have another step right here. So I might have like an outbound call. And I'm just going to put one step in here as an example, and I'm going to save it. Now, how can I trigger this manually? Well, there's going to be two main ways you can do that. So if I go exit the agent and I'm going to click on contacts, I could select all my contacts here. And I can go ahead and by selecting at the top, there's a checkbox. And then I can click on this bar on the top that says agents. I'm going to assign everybody to an agent. And this is where I can select the trigger here and enroll everybody. But if I didn't want to enroll everybody at once for this to run, I can actually run this as a drip campaign where I can say, I want you to do, 300 an hour, 300 a minute, whatever you want to set here. And you can select what days you want this campaign to run. You may only want this to run during business hours, right? So you can set your business hours here, you can set the rate, and you can drip this out over time. So once you set up your drip schedule, you're just going to go ahead and select that manual trigger and click schedule campaign. This is going to drip them into that campaign. Now, if you are doing a schedule or a drip campaign, you can see the progress of that under activity. On the activity tab, this is where you can see your bulk actions. Bulk actions, this is going to show the process of your drip campaigns. You're going to see how many contacts have been processed and how many are left to go. And you can also pause it or archive. Now, let me show you the second way you can do a manual action assigning to an agent. So let's say I'm opening up a contact here, Mr. Joe, and on the top, I got this icon right here. I'm going to assign to an AI agent. Now, there might be scenarios where you just manually kick this off. So you can select the trigger that you want and you can click enroll now. So those are the two different ways you can use the manual trigger. Well, let's go back into the agent builder. And now I'm going to show you some of the other triggers. I'm going to go back to my workflow. Now, the other triggers in here are like appointments scheduled. So let's say you want a certain automation to kick off every time they schedule an appointment. This could be things like appointment reminders. This could be things like moving them to different pipelines. Then we have call disposition. Now, call disposition, this is actually used by our power dialer. So we do have a built-in power dialer in the system. And after every call, you get a disposition, a little pop-up. You can say, the person didn't answer, there's voicemail, they wanted to be called back. And so the disposition trigger is going to fire every time there's a disposition. So you can select what dispositions you want here and what phone numbers you want to be listening on. That's the call disposition trigger. Next, we have call ended. And the call ended trigger allows you to do many different things. You might be doing like after call summaries. You might be doing notifications to clients. There's lots of different ways you can use this, but this is going to fire every time a call ends. Now, you can say, I only want this to fire under certain conditions, like only if the call was answered and it was ended, right? Or I could say only if it was inbound or only outbound and only listen on certain phone numbers. So there's lots of different ways you can use this, but that is the call ended trigger. Next, you have conversation started. And this is going to be, I think, probably the second most or the most used trigger in here because this allows the AI to respond to anything on any channel that it's set for. So when the conversation started trigger is here, we wouldn't have an outbound call. We'd probably have something like a talking node here. So talking or conversation. I'm going to say, hello, how can I help you today? right? And so this is the entry point for the conversation. So if I save this and I go back over here to the prompt builder, you can see the channels I have. Now, this works directly with the conversation started trigger. If I had a phone number here on voice, it's going to be answering calls on that channel. And when it does answer the call, it's going to go directly to this conversation started trigger. And if I had a phone number here for SMS on channels, just like that, if you get an inbound text message, it's going to go to that conversation started trigger. Same thing with email. You can hook up an email account to this AI. If it gets an inbound email, it's going to that conversation started trigger. So very flexible. It has many different things all in one. Also includes the website widget. So if there's a widget on your website and they start a conversation, it's going here. So very, very common step. Next, there may be scenarios where you want, instead of to include everything under conversation started, there might be different things you want to say on different channels. So you can actually specify and have multiple triggers here and say, well, let's do a trigger on inbound call, right? So I'm going to do a trigger here on inbound call. And maybe we want to answer the phone a little bit different than how we answer emails. So I could add multiple trigger steps to one workflow. I can say the one above is for inbound call, and this one's going to be for inbound email. And so we can say any inbound email only replies to emails sent from this workflow, or, there's lots of different options here. So if you're doing outbound marketing emails from here, you can say you want the AI to just only respond to an email that you sent. So there's lots of different ways to configure this, and you can have it listen on specific email channels, and you can also have it listen for specific keywords if needed. But of course, I didn't select an email account here, but that's why it's going to highlight red. But this allows you to say different things for different events. So just like the inbound call, I could have a conversation node. And instead of saying, hi, can I help you today? I can say, thanks, thanks for your email, right? Something like that. Customize the conversation per channel. Let's go ahead and add a new trigger node and look at some of the other options in here. Trigger node. Let's see, we got inbound email. And we got inbound SMS, just like inbound email, right? I can specify certain phone numbers we're listening for messages on and certain keywords, and that'll trigger this automation. Then we have manual, which we already went over, and then we have on a schedule, right? On a schedule, this can be, at a certain frequency that you define. You can say this is hourly, daily, weekly, etc. You can specify when you want this to run, and it'll run, for example, every day. You want every day at 9 a.m., I want this AI agent to wake up and do this specific task. That's where you'll use the trigger schedule. On app event. So this one's actually really cool. So any connected integration or app that you use, a lot of them do have different events. You might be connecting Google Calendar, and you got an app event of there's a new meeting. You might be connecting GHL, and there's an app event of tag added. So you can tie into the events we receive from these integrations to kick off agent workflows in this system. Next, we have down here on lead field condition. Now, this allows an AI agent to wake up anytime it detects a specific change to an agent. Let's say a person gets the company name added and the company name equals XYZ. Well, you can trigger a condition based on that. Let's say you're listening for lead scores. At a certain lead score, you want to do a certain action. Well, you can use the lead field condition to do that. So any custom field and any built-in field can be listened for to trigger an AI agent under when there's a certain update. It's a very powerful step. And then next, this is actually one of my favorites. You can actually catch a webhook and have that trigger an automation as well. You're going to click this button, generate webhook URL. It's going to give you a specific URL you can send a webhook to. It's going to be any type of webhook, any type of data. It's going to capture that data and it's going to break it up into variables for you so you can use that in your workflow. So you can be catching things from Zapier, you can be catching things from NNN, any sort of system out there, and use that to trigger a workflow. It's very powerful. Next thing, pipeline column change. This is also one of the more popular ones in here. So I can say anytime the pipeline sales, anytime someone's dropped into the one category, right, let's go ahead and fire this AI agent workflow. So very, very common trigger. And then next we got when executed by another workflow. So this allows you to execute additional workflows after one runs. And so there's many different use cases for it. If that sounds interesting to you, you'll know when you need to use it. So it's one of those things that's available if you need it. Let's see. One thing that I skipped over, I think, is active tag. And so the cool thing about active tag is it works when not only the person gets the tag added to the contact, but it also works for existing people that have that tag. And that's why it's called active tag. So that's it for the triggers here. Next, I'm going to go into one of the most powerful steps here in the AI agent builder. And let's go ahead and show you what that is. So I'm going to click the plus button and we're going to click on sub agent. Now, sub agent is like an agent within your agent that's assigned to do a particular task. I'm going to show you one example of how you can use this, but just know that this is probably one of the most powerful steps, depending on what tools you hook it up to and depending on what prompting and instructions you give it. You can do just about anything you can dream up. Your imagination is really the limit. First of all, it's going to give us a system prompt. This system prompt is where you can give it the instructions on what to do. And so I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you asked on an ask and save step, what's the person's company name, right? Well, I can pass that company name here in the system message, right? Because we got the variables. You can click the plus button. And I'm going to give this agent instructions. I'm going to say, I want you to search the web for this company name, and I want you to generate a summary about what they do and the industries they serve and estimate the revenue that they generate per year or research them online. And so with that instructions, I have to give the AI agent some sort of tools. I'm telling it to search the web. Well, let's give it a tool to do that. So I can come in here under tools and I can type in search and I want to do a web search, right? And so it's going to search the web using an MCP tool and it's going to get the results. And based on those results, the AI LLM is going to process the output, right? And it's going to keep going, calling tools and processing the output until it's done, right? And so when does it know it's done? Well, I'm going to get a structured output. So I'm going to tell the AI, this is what I want at the end, right? And so if I'm giving it instructions on generating a summary about the business, right, I can type in summary about business. And I'm going to give it some instructions, put in the summary you learned about the business after searching online for it. And so that's how I can get a structured output. Now, you might be using this to find the contact information, get me the business phone number for this website, right? Give me this, try to find the CEO of this website. There's so many different ways you can use it. I can even give it tools to like try to look up contacts in the CRM, fetch calendar information. There's just so many ways you can use it. And with the MCP tools, you can connect it to so many different systems. But when you're working with this sub agent on the right, this is where you can test it. So it is like a chat style test. So think of it as data in and data out. So you could, depending on your prompt, just say something like go, right, on the right side, and that'll kick it off. So very, very powerful step in here. And so that about wraps it up for everything in the system. I hope you enjoyed watching all of those nodes and learning how you can apply them in your business. And if there's certain nodes that you want to see that we don't have yet, please let our team know. Our team is hard at work, constantly adding nodes and updates and new features here so you guys can enjoy those. So I appreciate you joining me today. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.